This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Summer won't be here for another month and a half, but parents, now's the time to sign up for camps and childcare this summer, and it can be challenging. The pandemic robbed families the opportunity to send kids to sleepaway camps in Connecticut last summer, but this year the state says summer camps with overnight and day programs can open. What will that mean for kids and staff who will still need to follow safety guidelines? The Office of Early Childhood regulates camp and daycare programs in the state, and today we hear from its commissioner, Beth. She'll answer your questions too. Here's the number to call in, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. First joining us now on Zoom is a local summer camp director. Kath Davies directs Camp Hazen, YMCA. That's a summer camp in Chester, Connecticut. Kath, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lucy. Good to be with you.
So we're all looking forward to summer. Tell me, how are you preparing? And tell us a little bit about your camp in Chester.
Sure. So Camp Hazen YMCA is an overnight camp and day camp in the Connecticut River Valley. We have about 400 kids overall throughout the summer, each session. And then throughout the year, on a regular time, we would have schools and universities come out to do team building and such. Certainly, we are getting ready for the summer. The guidance from the OEC is imminent. The camp directors are waiting on the edge of their seats for the overnight camp guidance, but that should be out very shortly. And we're basically just recreating our program and making sure that we can keep kids safe while giving them the good experience that they're looking for.
So Commissioner Beth is on with us as well from the Office of Early Childhood. Commissioner what can you tell us about this guidance that's imminent?
Good morning. How are you, Lucy? Happy to be here.
Well.
Yes, the guidance is coming out today, this morning. It has been sent to some programs. It's just making its way out, so it is hot off the presses. We were waiting for CDC to issue their guidance for camps, which they issued at the end of April. And so Connecticut will be basically saying to camps, you need to follow the CDC guidance about camp operations, and Connecticut will maintain right now its mask requirements. So the things that changed compared to last summer are the group sizes are no longer limited. The cohorts are not required, but we are strongly recommending that camps continue to have cohorts of children, distance when possible, be outdoors as much as possible. All that good guidance that they followed last year, which those that opened had a very successful summer camp experience last year, but this year things are a little different. Their staff will be vaccinated. And so we're providing guidance to follow CDC, but also to follow some of the good guidance that's been out there.
So Kath, when we hear from Commissioner talk about how the camps must follow CDC guidelines, but there's not going to be any requirement to keep group sizes a certain size or cohorts. I'm just wondering, how you will move forward just to make sure that both the kids that go to your camp and the staff are safe.
Sure. Well, we're definitely looking at a multi-layered approach to be able to minimize exposure and make sure kids can get that camp experience while staying as safe as they can. So we will be keeping cohorting, and basically we've changed our program up from being like an individual choice program to cabin groups really having a group consensus. So 2 cabin groups of 8 kids will come together and they'll develop their schedule together, and that group will be the ones that stay together to do all their program throughout the time here. So we think that's a good thing that we're going to keep in place, whether the guidance says to or not. But in addition to that, we have all the traditional stuff. Kids will be wearing masks. We'll be doing hand washing like we've never done before, keeping as much physical distance as possible, and then also implementing some of the strategies that we had last year for our day camp program in terms of health screening and just doing some recommendations to families about what kind of activities they're doing in the couple of weeks leading up to camp, just to make sure that they're not doing any high-risk activities.
And Kath, what have you been hearing from parents? I know last year was such a bummer when camps weren't able to have the sleepaway programs or the overnight camps. So have you been getting a lot of input, and are there wait lists to do your program?
Definitely. Kids definitely want camp, and I think parents definitely want camp as well. We did run a day camp program last year, so our day camp is got wait lists on some sessions, but a couple of spaces still there. Our overnight camp families, we definitely missed them last year. For a lot of kids, like with graduation and with school, they missed out on their pinnacle year kind of thing. So we have been offering them an opportunity to repeat if they missed a key year last year. But yeah, we're running wait lists on a couple of sessions for several age groups, and we're still getting lots of friends of other kids that want to come in.
You can join our conversation if you have questions about summer camp programs here in Connecticut. The number 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WMPR, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Commissioner Beth is here from the Office of Early Childhood, and you're hearing Kath Davies, Director of Camp Hazen YMCA. This is a summer camp in Chester, Connecticut. So Kath, I think I understand that you're also on a camp advisory group, working with the state, coming up with operations in this pandemic. And I'm wondering how you and your colleagues have talked with the state about making it work, because kids need this kind of summer programming.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on the Youth Camp Safety Advisory Council, which is commissioned through the OEC, and we work with Valerie Bryan and her team. There's basically camp representatives from different types of camps throughout the state. So whether it's non-for-profit or for-profit day camps, sleepaway, university-based camps. And really, we've just been talking about the need to get some guidance and talking about practical ways that we can implement it into camp. I know the OEC and the state has definitely worked a lot with the Connecticut Camp Association as well, to get their input as well.
One thing that's great about camp is all of the outdoor activities, but something that an activity in the summer that you hope that children are able to do and to also learn, and that's swimming. So how does that work at a camp? Because you're not able to wear masks.
Sure. So there are some exemptions to the mask guidance that's currently in place, and swimming is definitely one of them. So really, when we're going down for swimming, we're just going to have certain cohorts in certain areas at a time. So they'll just be staying with their group that they've been with the whole time, and they'll be able to play and have fun in the water as they would normally do.
Certainly this year feels different because of the vaccines that are available, especially for individuals 16 and up. And so how has that changed the picture for you when we're looking at safety guidelines, and also even attracting staff and feeling comfortable to work at camps this summer, Kath?
We were definitely grateful to be able to get in with educators as a childcare service to be able to get our vaccinations early. And we've had a good response from our seasonal staff, and the majority of them are getting vaccinated for the summer. Definitely the whole idea of not having to quarantine if you are exposed is definite bonus in terms of staffing and just figuring out that puzzle. So going forward, it definitely takes that edge off in terms of the apprehensions that we had last year in terms of working in this kind of environment.
Have there been challenges to finding staff that may have been there every summer, but if they're abroad or not able to come into the country, has that been challenging? And how do you find people locally?
Staffing is definitely a big thing every year. When you're trying to hire 150 staff every single summer, it's a big thing. We are blessed to be able to have a big return rate, and we've got a great core group of staff that are coming back. But this year, more than ever, the biggest thing that's been hard for us at Hazen is the lack of international staff. And we were so apprehensive early on over the winter about what summer might be like. So we didn't hire the number of international staff that we have in the past. So we're definitely still have spaces out there. So if there's any university students looking for something to do for this summer, definitely got a good opportunity here at Hazen. But Camp Hazen normally has about 35% of our staff are international. We really try to get a diverse global community here. So it's definitely going to be a big change for a lot of our families, because that's one of the things they expect when they come to us.
Commissioner what are you hearing from camp programs, both day programs and overnight, when it comes to staffing? Are there challenges to find people to work in these programs?
Lucy, yes, there are definitely challenges, but the camps are being creative and seeking staff, and hopefully they will get there. I think, Governor Lamont, it has been so clear that he wants kids to have a great summer and have those social experiences. So we're doing everything we can to help camps. And I know you're going to have Chris Soto on to talk about some grants that they're putting out to help pay for more kids to attend. And OEC is doing things like providing PPE for camps where they can pick up PPE that they may need to reduce some of those other costs to help camps be able to focus on the staffing issue, which is a challenge in childcare and with camps this year.
Kath, I'm wondering if you can add to that when we think about, summer camp. It might be a program that some families feel is out of reach. And I'm wondering how Camp Hazen works to reach all children regardless of their household income.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're a big believer at Camp Hazen YMCA that a family's financial situation shouldn't be a reason for them not to have a camp experience. In a traditional year, we give out over $300,000 in financial assistance, and we do that in a few different ways. We partner with a lot of social services and schools to be able to get scholarships and stuff, but then also individual families can apply. And we basically have a tier pricing program. So tier one's the actual cost of camp. And if your family can afford that, then that's what we ask you to pay. But then we do have some subsidized rates where it's no questions asked. And they can just use that if it means to take the edge off, and that'll help their kid get to camp. And then, of course, we have the traditional sliding scale where people can work with our office to be able to get the help they need to make sure their kid can come to camp.
Again, that's Kath Davies from Camp Hazen YMCA, a summer camp in Chester, Connecticut. Commissioner Bai, I know because your Office of Early Childhood also license daycare providers, and you're also in charge of these camps, not municipal camps, of course. But I'm wondering, for parents who are struggling to find summer programs, is there a website or a central database where they can find programs for their child, depending on where they live?
Yes, absolutely, Lucy. 211 Childcare is a place where parents can find camps. Their licensed camps will be listed there. That's one way. A lot of municipalities have camps as well. But the other good thing about 211 Childcare is that's also a place where families can find out about childcare subsidies. Camps do provide childcare. We learned that last summer. I know in my office, the canceling of camps was one of the most difficult things for folks in my office. So calling 211 Childcare, parents can both find out about where there's a camp near them that might meet their needs, and also how they can get some financial assistance. And Governor Lamont has been focused on making sure that it's affordable this summer. So the state of Connecticut is using some of the federal funds to pay the parent portion of Care for Kids, which is the child care subsidy, to make some summer experiences will be free for parents on Care for Kids, because the fees will be paid by the Office of Early Childhood through the federal funding. And in addition, camps or summer programs for 3 and 4-year-olds are designed to be free for about 10,000 children, both through a collaboration with the Family Resource Centers that will be offering pre-K summer experiences, and for children in state-funded school readiness and child daycare programs, the state will be paying the parent fee for the summer to really encourage parents to keep their children in programming this summer, because so many months of preschool were missed due to the pandemic. Many programs closed, most centers and preschools closed while some stayed open. And so to the governor, it was really important that we encourage families to stay, and that those that had difficulty paying would get support through Care for Kids or specifically designed summer programs for families with young children.
Before we head to break, I wanted to return to Kath Davies, Director of Camp Hazen YMCA. We talked about vaccinations earlier, Kath, and I'm wondering how camp programs are approaching this for people who are 16 and up. Is it a requirement to get vaccinated to come to a camp? And how do you handle that with your staff numbers?
Sure. So we have not made it a requirement per se, but we are definitely highly encouraging our staff to do so, and giving them all the resources and education they need so they can make an informed choice. We've just done a bit of a doodle poll, and we have found that over 90% of our staff are planning on having it by the summer, and some are still a little bit on the fence. So it's just a matter of educating those folks to see where they end up.
Commissioner Bai, did you want to add to that? Is this something that the OEC strongly recommends camps consider, or where vaccination should be a requirement against COVID?
Yeah, we're strongly recommending that people get vaccinated, much like Governor Lamont is doing. It's just important for everyone's health, for community health, and I know the camps are working hard with their staff to get vaccinated.
We'll continue to talk with Commissioner Beth Bai with the Office of Early Childhood after the break. But first, I want to thank Kath Davies for joining us, Director of Camp Hazen YMCA. I hear the energy in your voice, Kath. I bet your summer camp in Chester is pretty fun.
Well, yeah, we have a good time, but I'm just excited. Kids need camp more than ever this year, so we're excited to have them outside with some good role models and having a good time.
Again, thank you, Kath Davies. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel, and this is Where We Live. Coming up, we're going to talk more broadly about childcare. At one point, Connecticut had a gap of 50,000 childcare slots. We're also going to learn more about how federal COVID relief money will help daycare providers and families. And you can join us too, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. My guest today on Zoom, Beth, Commissioner of the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood. If you have a question for her related to camps or daycare programs, here's the number, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. Or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Commissioner Bai, when we spoke to you last year, we were talking about Connecticut having a severe child care crisis even before the pandemic. What does it look like today?
Yes, Lucy, definitely way more programs are open. We're up to about 83% of our pre-pandemic supply of childcare / preschools that are open in Connecticut. So that's a big change. I think there's still some challenges with enrollment for some programs as parents have been hesitant to send children back. So they continue to really face some struggles financially. And we're about to release $120 million in stabilization funds to all licensed programs in Connecticut. We had the webinar last week with the field, and that's to help with some of these huge revenue losses that they faced over the past year, because certainly we see a recovery in Connecticut right now, and we need childcare in place for families to get back to work.
120 million sounds like a lot, but also probably just a bridge to help these daycare providers.
Exactly. It's probably between 20 and 25% of their operating budget for the year, and certainly many of them lost way more than 25% of their revenue this year. But thanks to Rosa DeLauro and our whole delegation and President Biden, they recognize that childcare, much like the airlines and the restaurant industry, needed supports, and childcare is really infrastructure for our economy and our workforce.
That's certainly something that was that everyone realized, I think, in the pandemic, for those who hadn't really thought about how childcare is so essential. But let's talk more about the people that are providing care to our children. They work long hours. They're not compensated very much. I saw the median hourly pay from the Bureau of Labor Statistics last year for a childcare worker was $12. $12, Commissioner Bai. They make less than housekeepers or parking attendants or even telemarketers, according to the 19th. And so how do we boost the pay? Because I know parents who are listening are thinking, we pay so much in childcare, but the people doing the work aren't getting much at all.
Yes, that's the challenge, Lucy. I don't know if you know this, but I got involved in public policy because I was a childcare director, and I had staff just leaving all the time, and my best staff leaving. And so I got involved with a group called Worthy Wages almost 30 years ago now in Stamford to deal with this challenge that we're still really dealing with in Connecticut and across this country. It's women's work from women's work, right? Parents can only pay so much and make it worth it for them to go to work. So we are seeing some real recognition of this. If you listen to President Biden's talk, and when I had a chance to meet with the vice president, we talked about wages of childcare workers as a big problem. And we talked about camps having challenges with staffing. Well, right now, childcare programs are having huge problems with staffing. And as the economy heats up, that'll get even harder. So we are doing a couple things now. One is that of the $120 million that's going out to programs, we've said programs need to commit that 25% of the funds that they receive will go to staff in the form of bonuses, or perhaps to help pay their health care premium, their portion, or retirement, or so, because it's a one-time payment, but that some of these funds get right to the people doing the work. And then as we look at universal childcare and universal preschool as federal proposals, we're looking for ways in Connecticut to make sure that we have clear guidance for programs on what are appropriate wages. And in the president's plan, they said that states will be expected to reimburse teachers of early childhood as at the level of public school teachers, which would be a huge change. So we'll wait to see what the federal guidelines are and the rules are. Governor Lamont has committed to increasing the pay that Care for Kids pays to accredited programs in the state, family child care centers that are accredited. The state will recognize that quality standard by significantly increasing the funds, $26 million over 2 years to help that, and that will help with wages. But you have to get at the base. How do you support the base so that programs can give teachers increases that they can afford in a sustainable way?
You could join our conversation with Commissioner Bai, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Commissioner Bai, when we hear about programs not only to help daycare providers, but also the staff, and then earlier you talked about subsidies for parents to help them afford childcare. Caroline tweeted at us, in my town, there are limited options for camps with before and after care. A camp from 9 to 4 can be difficult for working parents who commute. I hope some federal funds can be used towards making camp more accessible to kids of working parents, which is a great point. So tell us, how your office works with municipal towns and cities with providing this kind of programming, because otherwise you can't make it work. You can't get your kid to camp.
Yes, it's very difficult to make it work for families when they're working full time. Once again, probably the best effort toward helping parents that need that extended care is with Care for Kids and family child care, where it's accessible in and around the camps, who tend to have more flexible schedules. So that, that's one way. I know we're also working on with our programs this summer for the 3 and 4 year olds with the FRCs, providing transportation for children as needed. And that helps if parents have a second place for their children to go after camp, to at least get them there. But this is an ongoing challenge that, the school day, school year programs are not necessarily meeting the needs of families. And it's why, as we look to expand childcare in Connecticut with federal funds, that we've got to look at a system that meets the needs of working families as well as the educational needs of children. Because I think one thing we learned in the pandemic, which I'll say wherever I go, early childhood education is childcare. Childcare is early childhood education. Kids are learning all the time. Even when the kids weren't in school, people say learning loss. Well, kids were learning things at that time. And so we've got to make sure the settings for our kids are high quality, and that we also support families, because it can't be infrastructure to the workforce if it doesn't meet the needs of the workforce.
Again, you can join us, 888-720-9677, if you have a question about daycare programs or camp programs this summer. Abby's calling in from Griswold. Abby, can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead, Abby.
Hi, Beth. It's Abby Glass. I hope you remember me. We've spoken in the past.
Oh, Abby, I'm so glad to hear your voice.
Thank you. I was excited to hear you this morning. But my question is, we had a summer camp program in our town where the application for assistance went through a third party and expired at the end of April. However, I'm listening to you now this morning, and I'm realizing it sounds like there's a lot more funds available. And would the limited number of spots for that help increase? And would a deadline possibly change if there was increase?
Yes, Abby, it's a great question. Another initiative that was announced last week by Governor Lamont is that Care for Kids will be extended to families that make between 60 and 65% of the state median income, which is, the previous was 50%. And so that means more families will be eligible for help, and the Care for Kids can apply for summer camp because camp is childcare. So I encourage you and others listening to call 211 Childcare to ask about signing up for childcare help this summer and camp help this summer.
Again, you can join us if you have a question for Commissioner Beth Bai, who leads the Office of Early Childhood. This agency licenses daycare programs as well as summer camp programs in our state. The number 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR, or share a comment on our Facebook page. You can also find us on Twitter at Where We Live. Earlier, Commissioner Bai, you mentioned that some parents were keeping their kids home in this pandemic, and of course that impacts daycare providers when they don't have children enrolled. But I wonder if you could talk more about, what you have learned through the child care program over the last year in terms of safety guidelines and where things stand. Where are we hearing that providers are getting vaccinated?
Yes, Lucy, we are hearing providers, child care providers have been on the front lines, and the governor wanted to recognize that by opening up vaccines to them along with the public school teachers so that childcare can continue and be there for families. And indeed, tens of thousands took us up on the vaccine clinics specifically for childcare providers. And we also worked to have special sort of leader workshops with experts to answer questions about vaccines to help with some of the hesitancy that we were seeing out there, and that seemed to have a good impact as well. So we are seeing that childcare providers are getting vaccinated, and so many did put themselves on the front lines at the height of the pandemic. So we want to recognize them, to allow them to get vaccinated. Certainly, it's not 100%, but it's a very high percentage.
That's interesting that you were hearing about hesitancy. So when you have you and your staff have these conversations with daycare providers, what are their questions about the vaccine, and how do you work to raise awareness about this vaccine and the advantages of getting vaccinated?
Yes. Well, I was really grateful for the partnership of SEIU and our staff family childcare networks, because we were finding that there was a significant amount of misinformation out there about what could happen if folks got vaccines. So we brought in the Department of Public Health helped, and we spent an hour on an evening Zoom call answering all the questions of folks who were just identified as leaders within either the union or within their family childcare network. And they had their questions answered. And then on other calls, they were able to share the information and encourage vaccination. So it really was, making sure that the peers understood the advantages. And it was really a peer-to-peer work that went on to get folks to be vaccinated. But there were questions about, what would happen to your fertility, about, really items that just didn't have any basis in science, but that had really taken off among certain groups of childcare providers that we want to be sure to put out the actual information related to the safety of the vaccine.
I know that over the last year, the state has also relied on home daycares, not just the private daycare centers that we might have in certain communities. And I'm wondering, how you have conversations with home daycare providers about safety guidelines and even the idea of wearing a mask if it's their home. What are the guidelines and what's being followed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't say enough for how family childcare stepped up for families and for our state and our businesses at this time. They almost 70% of those programs stayed open, compared with less than 30% of center-based programs. And I think families felt more comfortable sending their children to small settings, which makes a lot of sense if you follow the science. They are following all the guidelines that childcare centers are following, cohorting, masking, although they don't have to cohort much because their maximum group size is 9, but hand washing, They were incredibly diligent, took us up on every offer of PPE and other either funding or materials that we were able to supply. But I think the great lesson in Connecticut and across the country is that family childcare is a key part of our childcare infrastructure and really economic development, because these are small businesses in our communities, and very often they have more flexibility with hours and days. And as parents are telecommuting more now and trying to figure out other options, family childcare has been there and shown its incredible utility. And thanks to funding from 4CT in Connecticut, we were able to go from having 5 networks that were supporting family childcare to having 12 that we're now extending to 14. So there are 14 networks throughout the state that are there to help family childcare homes with things like quality, health and safety. The Connecticut Nurses Association staffed a phone line for us throughout the pandemic to answer questions on the spot for family childcare providers in English and Spanish. So this was a great lesson. We knew they were important. Always knew family childcare was an important part of the system, but I think we're going to see more and more of it as a choice for families. And we're supporting the quality as much as we can. And they already have a lot of high quality activities going on in family childcare programs, much like centers. So
You're hearing Commissioner Beth Bai of the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood here on Where We Live. Coming up, we've been focusing on summer camps and also childcare broadly, but there are specific summer opportunities for public school students that will be funded through this federal COVID relief money. We're going to hear about that through the Department of Education in our state. And if you have a question too, you can also join us, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. Or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. My guest today on Zoom, Beth Bai, Commissioner of the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to learn more about some summer enrichment programs through the State Department of Education. But Commissioner Bai, we got a question from Stephen on Facebook who wanted to know why municipal-run camps don't have to comply with the same requirements not-for-profit and for-profit camps are required to meet. Can you talk about that?
Sure. There is an exemption in the statute that exempts schools and municipalities from licensing. And I know that's something that the Camp Association has been working with the legislature on because their feeling is that all programs should have to meet the health and safety criteria that the private camps are meeting. So it's just the way the law is in Connecticut that those municipal and school-based ones are exempt from licensing.
Would you like to see that across the board, Commissioner Bai?
I would like to see that because I do think, fair is fair, and we do think our safety inspections are really important for camps. So certainly I would, but it's really a legislative matter at this point, and we enforce the licensing requirements on the programs in our purview.
We've been talking about programs for kids this summer. The state has put aside about $11 million in federal stimulus money to support summer enrichment programs. To explain what that all means, joining us now is Chris Soto, Director of Innovation and Partnerships at the Connecticut State Department of Education. Chris, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Lucy, and good morning, Commissioner.
It's hard to keep track of all of the federal COVID relief money and where it's going, but I understand that the state has set aside some money specifically to make sure that all students can access some type of summer camp experience. So what does that mean exactly, and who's eligible?
Yeah, thank you. So this came about from the leadership in Washington and President Biden to pass the American Rescue Plan. And with that came about $1.1 billion to the state, specifically for school districts but the state has a set aside of about $110 million. And thanks to also Senator Murphy's leadership, really focused on ensuring there were set asides for summer enrichment programs, for after school programs, and for interventions that address learning loss. And so, as you talked about, we're really focused on the summer enrichment piece right now because we know that the timeline is so short. And so there was $11 million part of that set aside that we as a department are deploying out to communities. And what that looks like is a two-prong approach. And so, the governor and the commissioner have been adamant in ensuring that students this summer have a fun summer of learning every day and everywhere. And so with that said, we want to make sure that students and programs, maybe programs that can expand access, maybe they can offer scholarships to families, or maybe transportation was a barrier, and programs can now pay for transportation to get students to programs. Or maybe even, COVID prevented them from operating. And so this infusion of funds is going to help them operate this summer. So that's what we're calling our expansion grants. These are for, locally based, locally focused programs that are looking to do some expansion or subsidized costs for families. Then, the governor and commissioner have also, really encouraged us to be bold and innovative. And so we're looking at programs that maybe have state or regional scale. Right? We have to take control of this moment. We cannot lose this moment. And if we're just going to go back to doing a summer as we did, whether it was in 2019 or before, then we're really missing this opportunity, because I think we believe that there's no other moment in our generation where we're going to see this influx of funds. So we have to take advantage of that.
Chris, so when we talk about the grant money, is this going to go to community organizations like the Y or the Boys and Girls Club versus school districts?
Exactly. Yes. So that's a great distinction. And so, typically we as an agency fund school districts. And what's different about this is now we're going to essentially be granting to the local programs, as you said, your Boys and Girls Clubs, your YMCAs. Now, just to back up for a second, school districts, through the federal funds that they're getting, can use their funds for summer enrichment. So it's not like it's not, one or the other. We're really looking for communities to think boldly on how they can partner with their district. So how does that local community program partner with the school district and even the municipality to braid this funding, to really take advantage of all the resources that are out there?
I had a conversation with Senator Doug McCrory, I guess a month or so ago, here on Where We Live, and we talked about learning loss and the importance of children to get the support they need. But when we think about like summer learning programs, like it almost seems like, kids need time to have fun and not be thinking about math and English, even if they're falling behind. And so I'm wondering how with this program, it'll strike a balance so that you have lower income children that are also having fun this summer and not just enrichment programs to help with the learning loss too.
No, absolutely. We don't want to. We do not want to create a summer where there's two different experiences. And so we sent out a survey early on as we started this work to providers and families and said, what's the most important thing for students this summer? And the number one word that came back was fun. Fun was overwhelmingly the approach that we want to take. And we can have fun and have purposeful play. And we know that from the research. We know that students are learning when they are having fun. And so obviously school districts are going to identify students who need extra academic enrichment. But at the same time, again, these expansion grants that we're putting out there are for, those local programs to work with the school district. So if a school district has a class, from 8 to 12, well, how does that, that rec program or that YMCA come in the afternoon and really give some meaningful and purposeful play for the afternoon for the students?
Chris, you made a point to say that the set-aside money will be helping community organizations, but school districts can certainly also contribute to these summer programs. I'm looking at a headline in The Current by Rebecca Laurie. Hartford schools hope to enroll about 10,000 academically struggling students in expanded summer learning and enrichment programs. So is that what you're talking about, that the City of Hartford School District is also going to be allocating this COVID relief money that they've received to add to the programming that's available?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, there was a previous relief package just for schools, which was about $440 million. And so even if school districts allotted 1%, we'd have 4.3 million in the system that we can leverage to give students an awesome summer.
And so for the community organizations who might be listening, so what are the deadlines to get this money? Have they already passed?
No, not at all. So we launched the application last week, and they'll be due May 10th, next Monday. And then we plan to turn those applications around very quickly because we know, obviously they're planning. And so those awards will be turned around 2 weeks after that, May 24th.
Commissioner Bai, you're still with us. I'm wondering if you can add your thoughts about these programs that are coming online and the kind of programming that children need.
Yes, I love how Chris stressed that kids are learning when they're playing, and I really appreciated your question. And the governor's been really clear on this too, that kids need social emotional supports and they can be learning at the same time. And that's been an important focus here, even with, I know Chris has done some work with the museums in Connecticut and making sure there's enrichment. And we've done the same thing with our summer programming, that we're adding funds for enrichment experiences so that kids can have fun and learn together. This is, I think, Lucy, it's funny, we ask these questions now about summer and everyone recognizes the kids need fun too, but that's really true always. I mean, engagement is what we're about. And I know that Commissioner Russell Tucker and Chris and the team have really been thinking beyond the summer too, is what can we do so that we can learn some lessons from COVID about how we can engage students and make learning more engaging and fun. So I know our superintendents are really thinking about this too, because the vital role that schools play in children's social emotional wellness has never been more clear than it is among parents and schools right now.
Chris Soto, Commissioner Bai mentioned partnering with museums. So I thought I saw something last week, refresh my memory, where kids can go into museums free this summer?
Yes, that's definitely the intention. We're really excited about that announcement. And so the idea is that, we have so many cultural attractions here in the state, and we don't want to limit that, whether it's because of means, and again, really give students a fun summer. And so we have 5 of the biggest in our state that have signed on, and we're certainly kind of recruiting all the other museums and cultural attractions in the state to basically offer free admission to young people and students throughout the summer.
That's good to hear. You're also hearing Chris Soto here on Where We Live, Director of Innovation and Partnerships at the Connecticut State Department of Education. We've been talking a lot about the federal money, and Commissioner Bai, I wanted to just flag when we hear President Biden proposing American Families Plan calling for free universal pre-K. I wonder if you can talk about this approach and what this will mean for children to get more access to preschool and pre-K in our state.
Yes, I think, parents across Connecticut and the country are celebrating with the idea and want to know, when's it coming? That's what we're hearing. I think that, for a long time, politicians have been saying early investments have the best return on investment, and then we go on and don't make those investments. And so I think it's incredible that President Biden is looking at universal childcare and universal preschool. I think we have to be cautious, and I've been able to talk with Congresswoman DeLauro about this, that the systems work together, because we have a fragile childcare infrastructure that relies on preschoolers to make their bottom line work. And so I'm imagining a public-private system where there will certainly be significant public school participation like there is now, and maybe even larger, but that our private providers also will have preschoolers. And I liked how they said that it will be built in partnership with the states, because Connecticut already has local school readiness councils that can help us build the systems that work in their region and town. For example, in Eastern Connecticut, we tend to have more public school preschool than in other parts of the state. And so it just, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but we are talking with Secretary Cardona and Congresswoman DeLauro about how do we build this so it works for families and the workforce and works for kids' education. But I don't think there's a better investment we could make as a nation when we compare ourselves to other countries. We are way behind when it comes to those early investments that have the biggest return for families and for our nation as well, for our economy.
Before we run out of time, Chris Soto, I wanted to go back to you. I didn't want to minimize the fact that learning loss is a real challenge and a reality. And when we think about how the Department of Ed provides guidance to school districts who are seeing children falling behind, what is your recommendation in terms of the idea of summer school? So it's just incorporating both the enrichment as well as some of the learning to help them so that there's not a big gap come September.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really about a holistic approach, but also we don't know everything, right? We wanted to ensure that all voices were heard when we started thinking about what learning recovery looked like. And that's why we launched a group called Accelerate CT that was focused on, how do we approach the school year coming up and use the summer as that bridge. And so, we have, different pillars within Accelerate CT looking at learning recovery, looking at social and emotional health, looking at those family connections and community partnerships that exist. And then, of course, the digital divide, right? So those are all key components that we need to be kind of thinking about as we enter the next school year. And that's what we're doing through Accelerate CT.
You've been hearing Chris Soto here on Where We Live, Director of Innovation and Partnerships at the Connecticut State Department of Education. Chris, thanks for coming on to describe the summer enrichment programs and what it means. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Lucy.
Also with us, Commissioner Beth Bai, Connecticut Office of Early Childhood. Commissioner Bai, we thank you for your time today and to help answer our listener questions as well.
Thanks so much, Lucy.
This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Coming up tomorrow, ever wonder why you're required to learn algebra, but not how to balance a checkbook or file your taxes? On the next Where We Live, we talk about financial literacy. Personal finance and accounting are offered as electives in many high schools, but should they be required for graduation? That conversation tomorrow. Today's show produced by Kerman Baskoff. Our technical producer is Kat Pastor. On the phones today was Tess Terrible. We hope you're back tomorrow with us. Thanks for listening.